Police chief?
Oh, we can talk about
How's
all
everybody
that.
tonight?
Doing well.
Give us a page. 29.
Thank you, Tim.
Unless you want to start on any revenue, Doug.
Yeah, our revenue stream pretty much stays the same. We budget as best we can for that. It's somewhat, obviously, based on the amount of citations that we write, based on what we get back on fines and things like that. We have some core basic revenues that go with taking care of certain items that specifically the training center, where we get certain money there. So that's where our revenues stay. Some of the revenues, too, are also reimbursements associated with different task forces that our officers work with. The Monroeville Mall details that we work both for PennDOT and for different traffic details, speed enforcement details that we get reimbursed from. So if you look at some of our revenues in the reimbursement side, they've been a lot higher than what we anticipated. One case on patrol, I think we anticipated 85,000, and we're currently at the 179,000 mark.
Wow, nice.
Doug, you have the, I don't want to jump ahead, but you do have the 85,000 as a negative in the expense under police patrol. That's not in the revenue, too, because I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Okay, we give it a day. We do a budget. If you're talking about revenues, it's been specifically, I'll just throw numbers out there, but specifically the revenue items are associated with what we generate from generating soliciting permits, and of course what we get back from the fines, that part of the fine that we get on citations in certain criminal cases.
But I mean, for the overtime.
Say again?
I mean, for the overtime, you don't have that in the revenue.
I don't. I haven't. I read budget
Because
items.
Josie and I have talked about that, and we're thinking about doing that maybe down the line, instead of netting that out.
Right.
But it was always kind of unusual that you look at the budget and it says negative,
Correct.
Yeah, and that's what
That
we're
you shouldn't
talking
have
about.
that.
Yeah.
where you're debiting a debit, I guess, to become a positive, something like that in budgeting. So yeah, it always was a little bit unusual. Kind of like the same thing you just saw with the fire department, the pass-through that we have to do for the Relief Association. You look at that on a numbered item, it looks like it's huge, and it really isn't. There's
Right, because they have
200,000.
revenue to offset it.
Yeah, offset.
And the revenue is in finance.
Absolutely.
So the reimbursement for the revenues you're talking about for some of these special details
Are all in the operating budget.
on the revenue side,
No, correction.
No,
They're actually in the debit side, I guess.
What I'm talking about, on page 33, the third line down, there's a negative 85. That's what Doug's talking about on the overtime.
as far as the revenue, we could go to stick with revenue for a second. When you say how the reimbursement and then also any kind of citation fees, things of that nature, how are those itemized on the revenue side?
They're just,
Because we have police patrol and then police support services.
I'll have to-
Why you guys jumping?
on the revenue side of it, they're I think that we just anticipate what we, I prefer that to accounting.
Am I reading that right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, I was looking at page 1 on the revenue.
On page 26 is the revenue under police patrol, police support services. This is the revenue we get in from citations. We get it back from the state. For every citation that's written, we get a certain amount of money. Accident reports, people request accident reports, there's a fee for that. Vendor permits, false burglar alarms. We also have a state liquor control transfer. Those are the revenues, and what we're talking about is that we get, as the chief said, we get from details from down at the mall. If a construction company is doing work and they need police protection, there's an overtime detail for that. And that should be as a revenue too, in the revenue, instead of netting out under the expenses. That's just for the benefit of the council.
Very good. Chief?
Currently,
Floor
obviously open for any questions, but currently we're budgeted for 43 we're budgeted this year for 46 officers. We only have 43. We've been in a hiring process. It's taken a little bit longer than we anticipated. My goal is to hire officers in December. I'd like to hire 4, even though initially we wanted to hire 3, because the current officers, we now have another 4 officers that are going to be eligible starting in January to retire from the department. So in reality, we won't be really increasing, the department will stay at 46, so that's what we're budgeted for next year. Those officers are all on the patrol side of things, any of the new hire officers. Certainly, I'm open to any questions on the budget.
And as far as if you said there's a few officers that meet the criteria of retiring, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will. But if they do or decide to, we would still have the certified list to hire from.
And that's correct. That's what actually it became kind of interesting this year, and how long that took us to get through. There were some how do I want to put it, roadblocks that were thrown up, not of our own fault, nor the Civil Service Commission's fault. It just kind of threw into how we were doing our physical agility and items that needed to be taken care of that we didn't have control over. So those officers currently that I mentioned, the 4 off the current list, which was certified in July, those officers are already in the process of finishing up. They've gone through the medical, they've gone through the polygraph, the background, currently gone through the medical, and we're waiting to get a psychological done on them. So they'll be ready to go here, hopefully by next week.
We could extend that list an extra year, so it's 2 years, so it'd be July of, I guess, 2019.
2019.
That would still be a good...
Because we'll be hiring more people off that list. The reason we again got 6 or 7 people we started in the process, and we had at least 2 that voluntarily withdrew as we started further into the process. So yeah,
So the
these
public
4
understands we have been trying to get this list done, to get through
Absolutely.
this, to bring these men on. We have not been holding back for any reason. And as soon as we get there, they're coming on.
coming on, absolutely. And the unique thing about hiring now that I've seen over my certainly since 1997 when I was the assistant chief, been involved in the process now at least 3 or 4 times, that this time around it's a little bit different as to when we get officers. We get them coming from other departments just by the way our rules are, and when they get to past the physical agility, the written test, oral interview, physical agility, many of them then really evaluate what they're doing, and they decide to stay with the departments they're with.
Okay.
It's something I haven't seen the past couple. Certainly all the past. They would ought to take whatever they could to come here.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different now. So we're just seeing a different way of hiring, and that's true across the country. That's not just to us.
Yeah.
Everybody's having that issue. Law enforcement has been pretty much a changing profession here in the past 2 or 3 years, especially with hiring individuals. We still get good quality individuals. We're still a sought-after place to work in Western Pennsylvania, but this year I was a little surprised how long it took us to get through the process.
So your biggest increase in that whole department is healthcare.
It's healthcare stuff that I can't,
It's just out of control.
any control. Yeah.
And the OPEB.
And the OPEB, absolutely.
I do, Doug, I have a question too. When Josie and I met with you and Karen, and again, it's been 2 months since I've met with the department heads, at least 3 months. We're going to, if council is agreeing to the budget, if they do, and part of that is hiring another full-time dispatcher. And one of the things that we talked about is we have overtime here, and our overtime is really high for the dispatch center, and it's budgeted next year for $95,000. That should be reduced, and I would think.
I would absolutely be
Yeah.
reduced. And one of the advantages of hiring another full-time dispatcher, we have
Page
a...
is that?
I'm on page 31, Emergency Communications, 2110 Department.
Yeah, I guess for the public here, underneath my purview here is obviously Police Administration, Emergency Communications Center, Patrol Division, Support Services, Criminal Investigation Division, Police Training Division, Community Safety Division, which you'll see, School Crossing Guards, Public Safety Training Center. So they're the ones that, I maintain those budgets.
Is another dispatcher in our budget now, Mr. Little?
In this current budget, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
As of this point, we're at $103,000 in overtime.
that is correct.
That's correct.
Dispatch.
That is correct.
We have 8 full-time employees.
And
And
103,000.
what's happened is automatically every pay period, we have 6 overtime shifts no matter what, 6 shifts that we're short just because of only having, we keep 2 people staffed in there 24/7. And certainly, you know, the dispatch center, in addition to just, they've taken on more duties besides dispatching and being current with all the national and state standards that they have to be current with. They watch our prisoners, they certainly take care of all the records that we have, and we have to get records for people. You can come in and get a record really almost any time of the day or night. They do just the building security, if you want to call that. They monitor, obviously, the cameras that are currently at the intersections as well as the building cameras here. And it's, you know, if you talk to anybody, the back end of that, they do all the other access to these record databases that we have to get into, i.e. JNet, which is a Justice Network, NCIC Clean, which is the stolen vehicles. They enter all that. They do what's associated with the full-service dispatch center. And in addition to that, they are, you know, EMD trained, and they do all the fire EMS side of it. They help maintain the record management system. So it's not just, they've taken on many more duties as we've played, as technology's changed.
Well, this person's going to pay for themselves just from the overtime.
And one of the things I'd like to...
So there would be absolutely no overtime if there was another employee?
No, there would still be overtime. And then,
So
but
it's not going to pay for itself.
But there would still be, it would be a lot less.
Well, they're going to
Okay,
pay for
and-
themselves by, you're going to cut that number
Way in half,
significantly.
yeah. The other back end of this, too, is that it will free up on some days the supervising dispatcher, Jim Tomasic, to be able to help us out with some of the information services side of things that we have to do. We try to stay on the cutting edge.
So
of
if
the
you're
dispatch.
looking at an employee, you're talking with benefits and everything, around $90,000. Am I correct?
I'm going to refer,
I don't think it's
Dispatchers don't make-
that high, Steve. It's, I'd go more like 70, 75.
Just asking.
Yeah.
right. And I don't need to tell you, Steve, you know, obviously as they get
No, no,
more
that's
years on the
fine.
job, they get more years on the job, more vacation, more issues, you know, there's just more time that we end up, you know, dealing with the high, you know, staffing levels of 8 people trying to staff 24/7 and 2 people.
Yeah, it's a tough assignment.
I got just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
The dispatch folks and the secretaries, they're all in the same union, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there a reason for that? Because I'm curious. You would think they'd be in their own.
I can tell you.
Unifications.
Before my
I
time,
can tell you,
Just to me, it doesn't
sometime,
make sense.
a
It
long
doesn't.
time ago, when we had the little building here, the dispatchers technically were clerical.
Oh,
They didn't-
really?
They didn't do as much radio work and phone answering as now. As time went on and that started separating and, you know, computer specialists and all that, the dispatchers applied downtown to become their own union. The municipality sent the solicitor down to object to that because they thought they already had too many unions, and the judge agreed.
Oh.
So he combined the
Secretaries and the
dispatchers.
I'm just curious.
Could it be split? Seems like it should be, as the
me,
dispatch
it
is
makes
growing.
more-
Now it's way separate.
That's what I was just talking to
Well,
Nick
shouldn't
about.
we look at that in negotiations?
I think we should
I mean,
try and
Yeah,
split them.
I think it is something that should be looked at, because for the benefit of the public, we have clerical people that are in the dispatchers are in the same union with the clerical people. And most of the municipalities in Allegheny County are with Allegheny County 911. But if you go back 30, 40 years ago, most dispatchers in communities, they were not in a union because they cannot be in the police union. So they were not in a union. But as time marched on, and if they did get into a union, I worked in one municipality where they were in a public works union. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of dispatchers if they are, you know, going to have a collective bargaining agreement. But the point being is that we have secretaries and clerical staff that if they want to be trained, and they've been working as a secretary, for instance, for 25 years, but technically under the union contract, if they wanted to be trained, they could apply for being a dispatcher. And it makes for filling positions with respect to clerical staff in the administrative office. It makes for somewhat of a difficulty. If the dispatchers had their own union, it would be much easier.
I think we need to look into that. Someone needs to,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, back in those days, obviously, anybody could come in and be a dispatcher,
Right.
sit there at the desk and do a couple
Right.
things. Now they
And
meet
it's not like
over
that.
PEMA, Pennsylvania Emergency Management Association, is the one that governs what they do, as well as ABCO, which is a national organization. And by the time one of those new dispatchers, one of those part-time dispatchers gets put out on his own to dispatch, he has well over 670 hours of instruction.
Wow,
So
that's
it takes,
nice.
it's a long, it's almost, you know, it's a lot of, and that's the other issue is, we can't keep the part-timers, which is one of the other issues, the overtime's occurring there, to keep enough time to keep them current. So they gotta work enough hours every month as a part-timer to keep current with the technology.
That's understandable.
And that's
So
the
it would
issue.
make sense to actually split the unions, or,
Oh, it would make sense to split the union, I agree, but it would also make sense to have the extra person full-time right now.
Let's-
Even though I know it doesn't entitle benefits and everything else
Yeah,
associated with it.
good.
What's next?
Any
The
else?
budget in the camera, or the UHF radios?
The radio system, well, obviously the dispatchers are going to be getting some new stuff there too. We're certainly still in the process with the radio system because of grant funding. Grant funding, we're waiting to be acknowledged, again, not of any fault of our own, but a fault of the fact that the state budget didn't get passed. The state budget finally did get passed, so they were supposed to have this meeting in July. They're finally having that meeting on November 14th. We'll get approved for what we're getting with the grant money. The second that they give us the authority to start spending that, Don, which I hope to be the next week after that, we will be in position that we've done the research and we're ready to go on signing a contract to get the radio system
It'd be
upgraded.
like
And what would our match?
Thanksgiving.
what would our match be?
Well, again,
This is somewhere around $1 million, correct?
the system we currently are looking at is $910,000. So part of this is there was a bunch of we'll just call them incentives by Motorola to lower it by about $100,000. So we have it divided up into radio consoles in the radio room and then radio infrastructure, which includes 4 sites with all the microwaves, the repeaters, the transmitters, the receivers, the antennas, and everything that goes
So
with that.
we're looking at a grant to cover at least half of that?
Well, the goal was, I know we have $100,000 of it right now in the grant. That's the part that we don't know, and we won't know to the 14th. It was applied for, making it long-winded here, it was applied for $500,000 toward that event. Now, in addition to that, there's $200,000 that'll be coming out of the asset seizure account that we currently have funding for that. So the cost of the municipality could be as little as I say municipality, meaning out of the budget, as little as 210 and as high as 500,000.
We can't have, depending on the amount of money we get in the grant, we can't spend any money now because if we do, we couldn't use that money as a match.
It's a match, absolutely.
All right, so that's why we've had to hold off on this. But we have saved up, for the lack of a better term, we have about $700,000, and that is counting the $100,000 we do have currently.
And the asset seizure money.
Yeah, the
So
asset
I don't
seizure
even
money,
think
and we
that's added on
also,
top.
for the benefit of those people who come to our meetings all the time, back in the spring, we opened up council-approved a public communications fund, which we did a bond refunding in May, and we received, it's like when you refinance your house, you might get extra money back. Well, it's kind of the same thing. And we took money from that, $200,000, and we put it into that public communications fund. Now, in that public communications fund, for the benefit of the public, how this is going to be paid, we have about $350,000 in that. In the asset seizure, we have about $250,000, and plus the $100,000 in the grant, so that's about $700,000. And we're hoping, as Chief Cole just said, we're hoping to get more money on this grant, obviously the smaller amount that the municipality will have to pay. And that's all going to be coming out of capital. That's not in the operational budget.
But worth every single penny.
I
However
concur.
we have to get there, it's worth every single penny
I
for
think
the
the other-
benefit of the community, to the safety of our officers, our EMS, our firemen, and everybody that lives here, so that everyone understands how important it is that we get there, and we are working like crazy.
I agree.
And the Chief Cole advised me during the Public Safety Committee meetings that he has made handshake deals with better locations for our repeater and microwave sites. Channel 40 across in the valley to cover the lower part of Monroeville. Channel 22, or what we knew as Channel 22, up on the Illini Hill. There's a handshake deal to put repeaters up there. The Monroeville Mall is going to allow us to put a microwave site in there, so the police and even fire and EMS all have better coverage when they're in the Monroeville Mall. So there's 4 sites being added. We're actually going to be capable of putting up a 5th one. We'll wait to see how that radio coverage works out. In the interim, all the rented Verizon phone lines that go to our repeaters now are going to be able to be dropped. So, though it doesn't save us hundreds of thousands, it saves us money.
Approximately 2,000 a year per site that we were doing. That's absolutely
Yeah,
correct.
because we rent phone lines.
Red phone line. And you know, just one of the important things that everybody, you know, we've heard some talk about the fact that, hey, well, we want you to switch over right now, you can do it right now. Councilman Harvey's very correct. We only have one transmitting site currently on all our channels, whether it's Public
the
Works.
Crown Tower, too.
It's up at the Crown Tower. This site here is going to take 3 frequencies at the UHF band, be able to, obviously, police, fire, and EMS on another one, and then whatever, we have a second channel, administrative or a fireground or what do you want to call it, tactical channel to go to, and they're going to come off of 4 different transmitters at the same time, 4 different sites that give us real good coverage. This system is going to be engineered. It's going to be a portable-based engineered system, so you can talk on a portable radio and hopefully get 95% coverage of the municipality, which is all you can ever get 100%. So that's what we're looking at. I'm very confident it's going to be a very functional system, and it'll take the municipality for the next 30 years with no problem at all. It has the capability of being upgraded to a trunk system, which is like a cellular system in the future if we have to do that. It'll be state-of-the-art. The consoles are the exact same consoles that the 911 center uses. They're in the process of buying 140 of them, to throw some numbers at the public, for $150,000 a piece. You figure that out. To put them out at the new dispatch center the county's going to in Moon Township, because they're moving it out to Moon Township. So this is going to be interacted with that. It'll give our platform for all the fire, EMS, and police in our municipality to talk to anybody in the county. So it's the good system. It's the right system. We need to do it. And just so everybody knows, the system that we currently have is 1982 technology. The police system is 1979, 79, 80. So that technology. So we got the work out of these systems. We got the use out of these systems. So
we need to get this done.
We need to
I'm
get it
excited
done.
about this new
I
system.
hope it'll be signed off by the end of the month.
Thank you. Very good.
Yes.
Any other questions? Got more on that? Okay.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank
Hey,
you, sir.
thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
sir.
your time.
All right, folks, in an effort